What's up, folks? It's the professor. This is the C3 Fantasy Football Podcast, Episode 1, Week 1. C3 Fantasy Football Challenge is a 48-team football challenge that pairs 4 divisions of 12 for a mighty trophy, a mighty prize of $300 and a Shaq Thompson jersey. This is a weekly podcast that we're going to bring to you to kind of discuss some of those fantasy football topics, to rehash the league. We want to give a shout out to numberfire.com, who was a sponsor of this football league, and we will continue to give them a plug throughout the season and thank them throughout this show. Now I'd like to welcome the commish, Ken Dye. What is up, my man?
Not much, just taking a look at some of the fantasy stuff from last night and the weekend. So some weird, first week you're always going to have something strange going on.
All right. Well, speaking of that, just to put up, I want to share with you guys who our winners were from this week. I thought, let me see. I think I got it on a loop right here. If you look at this, you can see the winners of the C3 Fantasy Football League. And we'll start with, let me see. Let me pull it up so I can see it. It's backward. Let's start with the Mills League, and actually we'll talk about the winner of the weekly prize. We gave away this week's weekly prize was for the overall top scorer in all 4 leagues, and that goes to the Rochester Rusty Nails with 160.5 fantasy football points. So these are the team standouts there. We're 8 winners in each league. You can see them. I'm putting them up on the screen now. You can go to CarolinaCatChronicles.com and click the C3 Fantasy Football Challenge to find out all winners for all 4 leagues. Let's talk about your league for a minute. The Muhammad League, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So tell us kind of a little bit about what happened. How did it unshake? And not just specifics on the team, but, were there big surprises? What were the big surprises for you this week in your league?
Well, actually, I haven't really looked over the league, in depth too much, just mainly at my own matchup and how it just never took off, and trying to figure that out for next week. So I was really just kind of doing that before I take a look at everybody else. But I didn't do so well, so something's got to change.
Something's got to change. You didn't have a good week. I didn't have a good week in any of my fantasy football leagues. There was a kind of it was kind of feast or famine, it seemed like, for a lot of teams. And just peeking into your league, it looks like some teams, Aaron Hernandez pistol offense came in screaming with 135 points. Cam's Abdullah Oblongata, I like that name a lot, 112 points. So, Ans, look at this. Let's take a look. We'll do winners and losers of each league real quickly because we're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
A quick box score of the big winner in your league. And you can see this on –
Block Someone, No or Not, is the winner of our league, my league, 150.5.
Yeah, Block Someone or Not. All right, so it looks like they had and it looks like they were able to do this with 0 quarterback play. Eli Manning. Let's talk a little bit about Eli Manning and the Dallas Cowboys. Kind of crazy game towards the end. Seems like a lot of defensive scores in that match. Were you surprised? What kind of fantasy positions come out of that Dallas Cowboys match? Because Block Someone or Not only racked up 7 points from their fantasy football quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the biggest thing that happened in that game is Dez Bryant's injury. He's broke a bone in his foot and had surgery, and he's going to be out. They're saying 6 to 8 weeks, so he's going to miss half the season. So whoever, anybody that took him is going to be very disappointed. That's really the main thing that I got out of that. As far as Eli, it's the Giants' offense has just got too many question marks to know who's going to be scoring at or where. Even Beckham Jr., Odell Beckham Jr., he didn't have that much. I think he had like 6.5 fantasy points. So
is that surprising to you? I'm trying to see. It looks like the opponent, New Hampshire Ginger Madness, actually had Witten, who on the other side of that match that pulled in 22 points at the tight end position. That's a big get right there. Is the Odell Beckham Jr. Does this signal that he is human?
Oh yeah, I always thought he was. The people were talking about him taking him in the first round. I thought they're crazy.
I did too.
I think he's certainly a second round pick, but I think he's more of a late second, early third round pick. I think players like AJ Green slid a little too far. See, I drafted number 1, so I didn't get to catch too many of these sliders unless I got just real lucky. Some of it fell a good bit to me. But he was one guy that I thought, oh man, I wish he would slide to me. Of course he wouldn't, but he was one guy that I thought should have come off faster than he did in a lot of leagues.
Okay, so looking back further at this team right here, let me see. I've actually changed screens here.
Hang on, no.
I got it up right now. Okay, so AJ Green, speaking of AJ Green, he had him, didn't do much. It looks like he was able to bring in a whopping, really about 60 points through Keenan Allen and Tyler Eifert. Tyler Eifert is the standout, guys, this week. How important was this a surprise to you? Or is Tyler Eifert going to be one of those top 3 fantasy football tight ends this season?
That's really hard to say. There's just not enough body of work in the past for him. He's been one of those who's been talked up quite a bit. He and I think Zach Ertz both at the same time came in the league a couple years ago, but they really haven't taken off the way that a lot of people have thought that he could or should. So. But I think he's one to keep an eye on. He's been talked up a lot for good reason. He's got a lot of talent, so he's a tight end that has more upside than most, certainly. And
I would like to look at. I wish I could see just quickly. I wish it would list what their draft position was when if you could look at the team, because I think Tyler Eifert is going to be one of those top 3 tight ends. It seems like he's going to be a guy that they really want to build. I think he was hurt last year, and I think they really want to build the offense around him in some ways, which is crazy given that they have AJ Green and they just signed him to a big deal. Another storyline on this team was Carlos Hyde, 36 points against Minnesota. This is the big surprise of the week for me. I stayed away from Carlos Hyde. You think this is a flash in the pan? I kind of think this is. And what I think is that everybody slept on the 49ers through week 1. I'm one of those people. I thought they were going to be I don't think they're going to be good this year. I think there's too much turnover there. They do have a great quarterbacks coach there that I think is going to encourage them to take downfield shots more. But they really just came out and tried to use what we know has been San Francisco's strength for so long. That's that offensive line. And Carlos Hyde really got it done. Is this Carlos Hyde showing that he's going to be a stud back, or is this Minnesota just being caught off guard?
I think a little of both. I was disappointed in the way Minnesota presented themselves, both sides, pretty much the whole game. I really thought that they'd have improved themselves in the last couple of years with some firepower on offense and actually getting the defense together. But it didn't show up much in this game. Carlos Hyde ran like 168 yards or something like that, I think. And
I can look up the full score right here. Let me see.
2 touchdowns. I know that much.
Full box score right here. Yeah, he had, I think, 100. What'd you say? 146. I think that was something like that. 136. He was just
or 168, something. 160 something like that.
Yeah, 168, 2 touchdowns, 2 catches, 14 yards. Keenan Allen, too, 15 catches, 166 yards. That's a huge game. They were throwing the ball over the place. So some big some interesting standouts there. I think that surprised us on who the scores were. The big scores in that was those matchups. But I wanted to look at a team that didn't do so well in this league before we move on.
And well, actually, I had Keenan Allen as one of my top 5 breakout guys to look for that were kind of sleepers from last year. Now,
why do you one of the guys that I had a lot of luck with was, I think Stevie Johnson's going to get a lot of action there too. Why do you think Keenan Allen? I mean, I guess, is Keenan Allen a third-year receiver now? Is that what that is?
Third-year receiver, yeah, and they're famous. Third-year receivers are famous for kind of breaking out of their shell. He didn't have a sophomore slump last year, but part of that was that Phillip Rivers' production declined as the year went on, and his back got worse and worse. So hopefully he's going to be healthy this year, and I think that'll be reflected in Keenan Allen's stats. Just because he's such a crisp route runner, shows you don't have to have blazing speed to make a difference. He's kind of like their Julian Edelman, but he's got a little bit of everything except speed. So.
All right, let's peek over at another team. I want to look at the loser in this league this week. The lowest scoring team was Atlanta Riot. And I was actually hanging out with Harrison this weekend, so I'm sure he was happy that he was at the football game and not watching his fantasy football team play. First thing that stands out to me is what's going on. Mike Evans right here. It just says Coach Lovie Smith is unsure of Evans. It's his hamstring, and he is out. As the kickoff approaches, status evolved from a game time decision to spot on the team's inactive list. So it didn't even look like Mike Evans. That's a big loss right there. What do you think? What do you think of that? Do you think that they were thinking they could manage against Tennessee without Mike Evans in the hopes of getting him ready for some more difficult opponents going forward? I think they have to play New Orleans this week.
I don't know. It's just an axiom that anymore that you don't sacrifice, a player's health for a short-term gain unless it's like the Super Bowl or something. One or two games isn't going to make a season, but if you put a guy out there who's not completely healed and he re-injured himself and is out for the season, then how are you going to feel? So,
that was a big surprise for me, though. I felt like we hadn't heard a ton about his injury going forward into this match.
I heard something, but I didn't really pay attention to him because I didn't have him on my roster anywhere.
How about this? Sammy Watkins, 0 points. What happened there?
Not surprised there. Just too many different things. You've got a run-based offense to start with. You've got a rookie quarterback, inexperienced. I've said that Tyrod Taylor's going to be, real inconsistent, but he's going to have some of those spectacular plays that you're just going to say, wow, And I think it was like 14 out of 19 or something like that, which is just exactly what you want. And it's just like Rex Ryan wants to do, I think, pound the rock. And then if you can get your quarterback 20 attempts or less, and that's probably about where he wants them.
I wanted this. This is Sammy Watkins is one of the guys on my radar who I thought could have a season where he was worth drafting, and you might get some late value, some high value, kind of explosive year. But it's kind of a boomer bust kind of pick at this point. Is that and this is upsetting to me, is that Sammy Watkins is supposed to be that premier Julio Jones type talent, and it doesn't seem like it's really translating in Buffalo. Also, so you got a dud there. I mean, 0 points is ridiculous.
Well, another thing I think is Rex Ryan loves Percy Harvin. Remember, he had him with the Jets before he went up to then he left to Minnesota and all that, and he came back around to the Bills now. And I think he had like 79 yards on a touchdown or something like that. So
and he had a great game.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Percy Harvin had a good game, and it kind of just stole as soon as they got a couple of explosive plays from them, they just put it on the ground, because I know Not So Lazy Susan, our champion from last year, drafted McCoy, and she won this week. And we'll get to her team in just a moment, but that was a big part. Got a lot of points out of McCoy this week.
Yeah, but the problem about McCoy is I think you got like he did get like 2 touchdowns, but only had 20 yards or something weird like that.
I think did he not have some catches? That we'll look at it, but
yeah, well, I think Ryan Matthews took more snaps like in the second half, so it just didn't like the way things looked in Philadelphia, but. As far as McCoy, yeah, we can take a look at him and see what's going on.
Okay, last thing from this match right here is Peyton Manning, 5 points. He's had, I believe, something like 3 games in the last 5 where he has not had a touchdown. And then, but prior to 5 games before, like if we can think 5 games back from this week, prior to that, he had gone 51 straight games with a touchdown. There's some real concerns here for me with Peyton Manning. Are you concerned, if you're a fantasy football owner, that his age is catching up to him? He's in a system that he doesn't like with Gary Kubiak.
Well, I think, as far as taking the second part first, I think Gary Kubiak knows enough to be able to cater his offense towards a guy like Peyton Manning. He's the exception rather than the rule. It's like like when Jimmy Johnson had Dan Marino in Miami, for that year or two, whatever it was, and just didn't really use him. Just using him as like a high school quarterback. You don't do that with a Dan Marino. You don't do that with a Peyton Manning. So. I think he's.
But is he the same? To interject into that, is he the same Peyton Manning that could be like that?
No, he's not. Clearly, he's not. He was not accurate with a number of his throws, and I mean they weren't just a little off; they were way off. And
I heard he was throwing them in the dirt.
Yeah,
that they had at one point he was throwing on the run a couple of times. Just seems a real strange Peyton Manning story out there.
Yeah, you don't want to see Peyton Manning running, let alone throwing and running.
Right.
Yeah, that's not by design.
Speaking, but to kind of pivot this to a fantasy perspective, there's got to be some concerns with Peyton Manning there, but also the concerns need to be also. And I was listening to footballguys.com, the Audible podcast. And to them, they were talking about, and they're big Denver guys. They have one of the guys lives there and covers the team. And they were talking about Emmanuel Sanders' value given in the decline of Peyton Manning. And for me, I picked high on not high, but I waited until the 3rd round to get a receiver in one of my leagues, or 4th round, and it was Emmanuel Sanders. And they're saying that Peyton Manning doesn't have the physical ability to take advantage of his skill set. Where is this offense going to funnel through? Who's the fantasy football beneficiary, if any, on this team if Peyton Manning can't really carry the water anymore?
Well, I think in the long run, it's C.J. Anderson. The team's trying to go more towards a balanced approach instead of, a bunch of 45, 50 passes a game from Peyton. Anderson, as you know, he came on well last year, the longer the season got. And the idea was, get a defense in place, get a running game in place, and don't have Peyton Manning need to put the game on his shoulders and take them like he's been in the past. And that's a function of his age and declining skills, but he still knows how to run a team. So we'll see on that. Sanders might be a catch and run guy, with some short passes. So we'll see. Jury's out on that. It's just one game.
Yeah, C.J. Anderson, I think, hurt a toe in that game. Didn't have a lot of production. I had him on my fantasy football team, so you didn't see that. You got to wonder if you should start eyeballing Hillman if that is a lingering toe, kind of a toe issue there. Now
No,
we're going to jump.
No, I don't like Hillman because he was the guy that they tried to kick out last year. He's got fumble issues. Unless he's fixed those, we'll see.
Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over to the Mentor League real quick and talk about the winners and loser there. Your favorite team, big winner, our buddy Brian Palmies. He lives in Washington State. He is a Carolina Panthers football fan, obviously, because he's in our league. He has the greatest fantasy football name, All Hell Nipple Shorts.
Reference to Dave Gettleman, no doubt.
He had some big winners this week, and obviously we're going to see some of the same names, Tyler Eifert, Keenan Allen, but he got some production out of Jamal Charles, right? I think that obviously that's going to be his first round pick. He got some hidden production on the flex with Alfred Morris. My question to you is this: Allen Robinson, you watched the Carolina Panthers game. Has the fantasy football hype been overhyped with him?
It's really hard to say at this point. It's clear that he's going to see more than his share of targets. But I think they've, especially with tight end out, whose name escapes me right now, he's going to, still see a high bit of targets in that offense. He's pretty much the man, I think, as far as that goes. But they do have some other weapons that they don't exclusively have to go with him. But I think they want to, try and get the ball in his hands as much as they can. I think that's what best way to put it.
Looking on the other side, Calvin Johnson, only a catch, one catch, I believe. He only put up 4 fantasy football points. The Detroit Lions disintegrated in the second half as the San Diego Chargers mounted a big comeback.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see Calvin Johnson panning out this year, Ken?
Fantasy-wise, I don't think he's going to be quite the machine he's been in the past.
Don't tell me that. I drafted him in the first round.
I don't think he's going to fall off huge, amounts, but he's not going to be close to 2,000 yards either. Typical season, you think for him, you might cap it at about 1,600 yards. You might hope for, when you draft him. But I think you're looking at more like 1,300 to 1,400 this year. Couple reasons is the rookie Abdur Amula, I think is Amir Abdullah, whatever his name is. It's late. I'm tired too.
Amir Abdullah,
the butcher. Yeah, they're trying to go more well-rounded offense. Excuse me, just like the New Orleans Saints are, and the other team that we were talking about a minute ago, I can't think of. But there's a number of teams that trying to.
We were talking about Denver. That's who we were. Yeah. We were talking about Denver.
That's what.
All right, the loser this weekend in the C3 Mentor League was True Panthers fan. Didn't get any production out of Beckham. Cam Newton, 14 points. Okay. Nothing. If you get 14 points out of your quarterback, it's the minimum that you need. Melvin Gordon really didn't do anything. They were throwing the ball in that game. Torrey Smith run the ball all day long with Carlos Hyde. Jimmy Graham was able to score some points. He got a touchdown. Do you think that Jimmy Graham is going to find the same kind of fantasy value that he had in New Orleans? Is he going to be able to come close to that in Seattle?
It's possible. Only if he gets targeted like with half the throws that Russell Wilson makes, though. But again, really, he's the best option by far on that team. So when they throw the ball, it's going to be basically a run and play action pass off the run. I think kind of a team throw deep ball occasionally. But he may not be the Jimmy Graham that he was 2 years ago, but he might be the Jimmy Graham he was, that past year or something. So
right.
I mean, it's basically Gronk and everybody else. But I think of anybody, maybe a guy like Travis Kelce's got a good shot at getting the number 2 rank, taking on getting behind Gronk.
Are there any? What was the biggest fantasy surprise? Well, actually, we'll do a couple of last big winners this week. Kuechly's Cabaret comes in with 142 points. I'm guessing that he's going to have like Gronk. Let's see who he had.
Well,
this was in the Rucker League. Tyler Eifert again, Carlos Hyde. It's the same kind of, if you had Jamal Charles, the kind of usual suspects. Let's take a look at the second top scorer just to see what at Keep Pounding. No, the Caddyshack. So we'll look at this, and the Caddyshack played. Looks like they got some production out of LaShawn McCoy. When I was saying that Susan had LaShawn McCoy, I was wrong. She had Matt Forte, and Matt Forte exploded with 29 points this week.
Yeah.
So a lot of production out of Gronkowski, and a strong defensive performance with 19 points, strangely. How do you get 19 points and still allow 34 from your defense?
Sacks, scoring defensive scores, things like that.
All right.
Turnovers.
Okay, now just kind of some last kind of points. After this week panned out, Ken, how are you reassessing this fantasy football season after not reassessing, reorienting after week 1 as a fantasy football owner at this point?
Really not. Week 1 hasn't really changed anything that I've thought too much yet. Certainly there are always going to be surprises. Like I thought, Carlos Hyde would be a solid RB1, but I didn't know he might be a top RB1, that sort of thing. And every season has surprises and guys that don't match up. So you really don't worry too much about the first week. Just like during any given week, if you have everybody seems to have a down week, you don't really worry about it too much. It happens. It's fantasy football. But if you see a trend, then that's when you start worrying about, did I misread this? Let me take a look at that again. So,
yeah, I think a couple of things I'm going to kind of my parting advice on fantasy football after this week is to take into account my number one piece of advice for all fantasy football players of all time is to start your starters. If you overly play your matchups, you're just going to burn yourself over and over and over again. Even if you try to say, hey, this guy's got a good corner, he's going to, they're going to pay a lot of attention to this guy. Don't do it. That's when these guys that you drafted in the first, second, and third round are going to show out. So just because Adrian Peterson didn't have a good game this week, and he's going to play a tough run defense next week, and I'm just hypothesizing on that. I don't know who he's playing. You don't want to tweak and do too much moving. You want to, only tweak the periphery positions on your roster based on matchups. That's my personal opinion. I like to put guys that are going to play under the big time, primetime lights in the lineup too, because every now and then you're going to catch a big game. But what I think you should start looking at is looking at teams that have, if you are right now a team with a deficiency, whether it be a running back, whether it be a tight end, I think the way you're going to have to start playing the waiver wire at this point is looking at teams that have almost bad teams that start to play these positions as bailout positions. So I think, I'm starting to look at this as I pulled Austin Seferian-Jenkins late in some fantasy football rounds. And you know what? You got a rookie quarterback. You got a guy that's struggling, and the tight end is often a big out for him. So maybe you don't want to touch a running back on Tampa Bay. I'm going to tell you that. But maybe you can start peeking at like a Cleveland Browns team, a San Francisco 49ers team, a Jets team or something like that, a struggling team, and see if you are in a position where you're going to get an injury or something. That's how I would start to think about playing those matchups.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there that I agree with. Pretty much everything. They're all good points to make there. You're talking about rookie quarterbacks and tight ends, running backs, sort of like that. Well, I got Delaney Walker, who's his quarterback, Marcus Mariota. It turns out, even in a losing cause, that Walker was like my star for the week, of all people. So, and also got Doug Martin, unfortunately. The thought there wasn't so much that he's a running back on a bad team, but he's going to get his chances because they want to protect, Winston and try to keep games close if they can. There's always two sides of two different thoughts of that. You're of one mind, I'm of another on it. So we'll see. But I got him as like a flex guy anyway. So
exactly. Those are the guys that and when you look at it like that, if you're trying to play dudes on bad teams, you're in bad shape. So what you need to be doing, that's in a pinch, that type of thing.
Well, I started him on just sort of a whim because they were playing a bad team, Tennessee. They were at home playing a bad team in Tennessee. Tennessee had like one of the worst defenses in the league against the run. It seemed like everything with the stars were lining up. Doug Martin had a great preseason. All these things, went into it. I said, I'll go ahead and start him over T.Y. Hilton. Just because of, what you said, start your stars. I didn't do that. And even though T.Y. Hilton didn't have a good game either against Buffalo, which is why I didn't start him. There's the Bills. The Colts, in luck, don't tend to play well against those tough defensive teams. They don't rise to it. And so the receiver,
you called that. And T.Y. Hilton got injured too, so there might be some value. Might be some value with a Tony Dorsett or the other guy that's there that we like a lot. Philip Dorsett, that's right. And the other one is a lot of guys liked him, wanted us to make a move in a trade with Carolina, and I cannot think of his name to save my life. Backup receiver there, Dante Moncrief. So there might be some late value there. You're going to start watching injuries. I would also, this is guys with running backs and things like that. You get a guy that's got a toe injury or something like that you think might linger. You might want to start looking at kind of stacking, cutting some fat on your roster of a guy that's never going to start for a guy that might actually work his way into a starting role. Ken, we got to jump out of here. We got the C3 podcast at 10 p.m. You can check that out. We're going to be reviewing the Carolina Panthers game. Me and Joey and Mel were down there for the weekend. And also we're going to be at the Houston game this weekend. I'm going to be going to a bachelor party first and then just like rolling straight into the game. So I'm going to be a mess. But you guys are going to be fine. Thanks for joining the show. This is the first week of the C3 Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks to numberfire.com. And thanks for all the players, all 48 of you guys. 24 came out one step closer to the trophy. 24 are going to take the next step next week. Ken, thanks a lot, man.
All right. No problem, Joey.
Yeah. Well played. All right. That is out, and we are out of here.